A January snowstorm had swallowed Manhattan whole. The city, usually deafening, was muffled in white. Streets glistened beneath neon light, taxis hissed against slush, and inside the upscale restaurant Sorella's, the hum of wealth never skipped a beat. Ellie Harper stood at her post near the host's stand, her black uniform apron frayed at the corners. At 26, she was already carrying the kind of exhaustion that made her bones ache. She adjusted the tape on her sleeve, trying to kind of rip, and glanced toward the Gonan and chandelier bones. Everything inside Sorella's screamed luxury: hand-cut marble floors, silk curtains imported from France, even the faint perfume of roses drifting from the dining hall. For Ellie, though, it was just another night of survival. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from her sister: "Mom's coughing again. The meds are almost out." Ellie swallowed hard, shoved the phone back, and forced a smile as another group of A-listers swept in, dripping with fur and arrogance. That's when she noticed him. The man at the door looked out of place. His coat was a brown wool, the cuffs worn thin. He hovered at the threshold, eyes scanning the room as if debating whether he belonged here at all. When his gaze finally landed on Ellie, he nodded politely. "Any chance there's a quiet table by the window?" His voice was low, steady, carrying a faint Midwestern drawl. Ellie returned a professional smile. "If you don't mind waiting, we're slammed tonight." "No problem." He took a seat on a small stool near the bar, hands folded like he was trying not to fidget. Before Ellie could breathe, her manager, Chad Mayers, swooped in. His navy suit was pressed within an inch of its life, his gold name tag gleaming. "Ellie," Chad hissed, leaning close, "when you're done babysitting charity cases, make sure Mrs. Gershen's truffle risotto is on time, and stop smiling at people who can't afford this place." Ellie bit her tongue. Chad thrived on intimidation. He stole tips, belittled staff, and catered only to the richest customers. She gave him a stiff nod, then returned to her duties. Later, while balancing a tray of crystal glasses, Ellie noticed the stranger watching the room, not in the gawking way tourists did, but with a careful, almost calculating gaze. His eyes followed the jittery busboy dropping forks, the couple fake laughing over a bottle of wine, the sous chef rushing to cover a mistake. On impulse, Ellie slipped him a cup of hot tea. "It's freezing out there," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Plain tea. Not many people order it anymore." Ellie chuckled. "Not many people stay long enough to drink it either." The man didn't reply right away. He simply watched her, eyes unreadable. Finally, he asked, "What does this place mean to you?" Caught off guard, Ellie hesitated. Her gaze swept the polished tiles, the manicured guests, the staff pushing themselves past exhaustion. "It's survival," she admitted, "and hope on good nights." He nodded as if filing that answer away. From across the room, Chad barked, "Ellie, Gershen's table now. Quit wasting time with wallpaper." Heat rushed to Ellie's cheeks. She hurried back to work, balancing trays as though her life depended on it, because in many ways it did. Her mother's medical bills, the rent, the fragile dream of one day finishing college, it all rested on tips Chad would gladly cut if she stepped out of line. During a lull, Ellie found a folded napkin tucked under the stranger's saucer. In neat script it read, "Nothing here is as it seems." She froze. What did that mean? Megan Carter, Ellie's closest friend at Sorella's, brushed past carrying a basket of bread. "Be careful," Megan whispered. "Chad's on edge tonight, and I swear I saw him pocket money from the staff jar again. If he catches you chatting too much, you'll be next." Ellie tucked the napkin into her apron, heart racing. By 10 o'clock, the storm outside had thickened. The restaurant buzzed with laughter, crystal glasses chiming, but Ellie's eyes kept darting to the stranger. He barely touched his meal, instead scribbling notes on a pad. When Ellie passed by, he slid another napkin her way. "Tell the chef the food was perfect," he murmured, "but the joy's missing." She blinked. "Do you want me to write that down, or—" "Just the truth," he said, his voice gentle but insistent. "People stop saying what matters." Her chest tightened. Nobody at Sorella's ever asked for honesty, only speed and perfection. Minutes later, Chad cornered her near the kitchen. "You're done flirting with nobodies, Harper. One more slip, and I'll cut your hours in half." Ellie clenched her jaw, nodding. She thought of her mother coughing in their tiny apartment and forced herself to keep moving. At closing time, the stranger slipped his coat on. Snow clung to the wool as he approached Ellie by the door. His eyes softened. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not treating me like wallpaper." Ellie offered a weary smile. "That's not how I see people." He left a folded napkin on the counter before disappearing into the storm. Inside was $100 bill and the same haunting line, "Nothing here is as it seems." Ellie's fingers trembled as she read it again. Megan touched her shoulder. "Maybe it's nothing," she said. "Or maybe it's the start of something you don't want to miss." Ellie stared at the closed door, snowflakes swirling in the night. Something about the man's steady eyes, his odd questions, the cryptic notes, none of it fit. He wasn't just another customer. He was something else. And Ellie Harper, waitress at Sorella's, was about to find out. By the next evening the storm had quieted, leaving Manhattan glazed in dirty diamonds. Sorella's gleamed brighter than usual, as if defying the slush outside. Ellie Harper arrived early, breath fogging as she pushed through the heavy brass door. The dining room lights were still low, only the prep team shuffled like ghosts between linen-draped tables. She slipped her phone from her pocket and checked the pharmacy app again. Prices up, insurance refusing another refill. She exhaled, tucked the phone away, and tied her apron strings tighter like armor. Chad Mayers was already prowling. He emerged from the manager's office with a tight smile that meant trouble. "Harper," he said, tapping a clipboard, "we've got a private party at 8. No mistakes, no chatter, and stop encouraging strays." She kept her voice neutral. "Yes, chef." He smirked. "I'm not the chef. I'm the reason your paycheck clears." In the locker alcove, Megan Carter leaned against a shelf, clutching a stack of menus. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Ellie shrugged the fine okay. Megan grimaced. "I saw him take cash from the staff jar last night, like scoop it, gone. If anyone complains, he'll say he redistributed tips for service errors." Ellie swallowed the anger. "Maybe we collect our own tonight, no jar." "Already tried," he threatened to write me up. They fell into the pre-shift rhythm, polishing stemware, folding napkins, skimming the booking list. Around 7, the door swung open and a wind of perfume and winter air wafted in. The stranger from the storm walked in alone, brown wool coat, that same quiet posture, like a man trying to take up less space than he naturally did. He paused at the host's stand. "Window table again, if possible." Ellie hid her surprise. "Give me 3 minutes." She glanced at the floor plan. "We've got a two-top by the ficus, low traffic." He nodded. "Perfect." Chad materialized. "Sir, we're fully committed. The window section is reserved for regulars." Ellie cut in smoothly. "He's in luck. A reservation just canceled." Chad's eyes went flat. "Is that so?" "It is," Ellie said, meeting his stare without blinking. Chad stepped aside, smiling at the guest with counterfeit warmth. "Enjoy Sorella's." As Ellie guided the man to the table, he said, "Thank you, Miss Harper." Her feet stuttered. "Do I know you?" "You wore a name tag last week," he said, a hint of humor ghosting across his face. "I pay attention." She set down the leather-bound menu and a glass of water. Plain tea again. He lifted an eyebrow. "Am I that predictable?" "People who aren't predictable become problems for Chad," she said, then bit her tongue. "I mean—" "I got it," he said softly. "Do they treat you fairly here?" She laughed once without joy. "Depends who's watching." "I mean—" "I got it," he said softly. "Do they treat you fairly here?" She laughed once without joy. "Depends who's watching." During rush, the dining room swelled with noise and glitter. Ellie poured Burgundy for a venture capitalist who mispronounced the vineyard and bragged about his 4th house. She delivered oysters to a pair of music executives who angrily smiled at her, as if kindness was a tip. Between tables, she glanced at the stranger. He didn't eat much, but he watched everything. The chef's terse nod to a limping line cook, Megan's wince when a tray bit her palm, Chad's brisk head tilt toward a busboy who had the audacity to blink slow. When Ellie placed a pot of tea on the stranger's table, he spoke without looking up. "What does hope look like to you, Miss Harper?" She blinked. "Why do you keep asking me that?" "Because there's a difference between what you say and what your face says." Her throat tightened. She pictured her mother, thin wrists, wool blanket, the TV tuned to a daytime judge show for company. "Hope," Ellie said, measuring the word, "looks like people telling the truth, like keeping what you earn, like not having to hide." He nodded once, as if clicking a puzzle piece into place. "Thank you." "What?" Back at the server station, Megan whispered, "You and Mystery Man, what's the deal?" "He tips well and writes riddles," Ellie said, sliding a clean towel over a champagne flute. She pulled a napkin from her apron, the one he'd left last night. "Nothing here is as it seems." She held it up. "What does that even mean?" Maybe he thinks he's in a movie, Megan said, or maybe he sees what we see. An hour later, the private party landed, tech founders, their laughter a show of dominance. Chad orbited them like a planet around a hotter sun. Ellie moved faster, pivoting between tables, refusing to make mistakes. When she ducked into the service corridor for a breath, she caught sight of Chad counting cash in the shadow of the ice machine. He peeled off bills with the speed of a magician. Then, as if sensing her eyes, he turned. "You got something to say?" he asked. "No." "Good," he said, stepping close enough to smell his cologne. "Because I make schedules, and I can unschedule you." "What?" Ellie held her ground. "I'm just here to work." "Then work." He slid the money into his jacket. "Tell your friend Megan the same." Back on the floor, the stranger's plate sat barely touched. Ellie refilled his water. "Everything all right?" He lowered his voice. "If I asked you to write down everything you and your coworkers lose each week, tips skimmed, hours cut, would you?" She stared. "Why?" "Because numbers don't lie." He held her gaze. "Follow the money." Her pulse jumped those exact words again. "Who are you?" "Someone who doesn't like theft," he said. "Someone who believes invisible people hold up half the sky." Before she could press, a commotion bit into the air. At table 14, a woman in a sequin blazer shouted about a wrong order. Chad swept in a polished fixer. "We'll comp dessert," he said smoothly. "Ellie will apologize." Ellie inhaled. "The order is correct, ma'am. You changed your mind mid-course. I'll swap it out, no charge." The woman lifted her chin. "Are you calling me a liar?" Chad's smile went knife-thin. "Ma'am, Ellie is new." Ellie tasted metal. "I've been here 3 years." Chad's eyes sliced toward her. "Kitchen now." In the hallway, he hissed, "You don't correct guests in public." She tried to. He slammed a palm against the wall beside her head, not touching, but close enough to shake. "This is not a courtroom. You want a future here. You keep your mouth shut and your head down." Ellie forced herself to breathe evenly. A busboy rounded a corner, froze, then scurried away. Chad leaned back, exhaled, and smoothed his tie. "Now smile and fix the fish." She fixed the fish. She smiled. She swallowed the heat behind her eyes. When she set the new plate down, the woman sniffed and muttered. Finally, Ellie said nothing. At closing, Megan rubbed her wrists. "He's getting worse." "Yeah," Ellie said, "but I think he's sloppy." "Sloppy how?" Ellie glanced toward the office door. "He's counting cash off books twice tonight." "What?" Megan grimaced. "We can't prove it." "Maybe we can." Ellie reached into her apron and pulled out a folded ledger, thin, bound with rubber band. "Found this wedged behind the register when the till jammed." Megan's eyes widened. "You stole that." "I borrowed it," Ellie said, "for the truth." They ducked into the staff bathroom, the only room without a camera. Ellie flipped the ledger open. Inside, columns in neat handwriting, dates, server names, tip totals. In the second column labeled adjustments. The numbers in that column were heavy, -20s, -50s, -100s, names rotated. The pattern wasn't random. Megan sucked at a breath. "Holy." SHH, Ellie traced a week with her finger. "He spreads the cuts around so nobody catches the full hit. Looks like mistakes, not theft." Megan squeezed her eyes shut. "What do we do?" Ellie stared at the mirror over the sink. The fluorescent light sharpened the tiredness in her face. "We follow the money," she said softly. "We document, we don't confront until we can't be ignored." Her phone buzzed. A blocked number. Put it back. Last warning. Her skin prickled. She looked at the door, then at the ledger. Megan whispered, "He knows." "Of course he knows," Ellie said. "He knows everything." They replaced the ledger, hands shaking, and finished closing side work in brittle silence. Snow had started again, fine as sifted sugar. The stranger stood near the exit, coat on, hat in hand. As Ellie approached, he slid a folded napkin across the host's stand without breaking eye contact. "Be careful," he said. "Thieves get desperate when they feel watched." "What are you?" she began, but he had already stepped into the cold. She opened the napkin. Inside, a single line of neat script. Joy returns when truth does. Beneath the words lay a phone number and an address in Midtown. Megan lined over her shoulder. "Are you going to call?" Ellie slid the napkin into her pocket. "I'm going to find out why a man who drinks plain tea knows more about my life than my own manager does." Outside, the wind sharpened, chasing her down the steps. Somewhere between the slush and the taxi lights, the pieces started to align. The cryptic notes, the precise questions, the way he watched systems rather than people. He wasn't here for the food. He was here for the truth. Behind her, the restaurant door clicked shut. Elle turned her collar up against the cold and started. Behind her, the restaurant door clicked shut. Ellie turned her collar up against the cold and started toward the Midtown address, unaware that a black sedan across the street had just blinked its headlights twice, and that someone inside was already dialing Chad Mayers. The Midtown address from the napkin burned in Ellie's pocket all night. She replayed the stranger's warning over and over. Thieves get desperate when they feel watched. By the time dawn smeared light across her apartment walls, she still hadn't slept. Her mother coughed in the bedroom, a hollow sound that rattled the silence. Ellie patted over, adjusting the oxygen tank. "It's okay, Mom. I've got another shift tonight. We'll figure out the meds." "Ellie," her mother whispered, voice thin as paper, "don't let work eat you alive." Ellie forced a smile she didn't feel. Work is just work, but her chest ached with a lie. By evening, she was back at Sorella's, makeup hiding her sleeplessness. Megan shot her a look. "You look like you fought a hurricane." "More like I let one in," Ellie muttered. The dinner crowd poured in, suits sharp enough to cut glass, women draped in diamonds heavy as anchors. Ellie moved table to table, smile automatic, while her eyes scanned for him. He came late, same brown wool coat, snow melting on the collar. Tonight, though, he wasn't alone. A woman walked in beside him, tall, elegant, black dress that clung like liquid night. Her hand brushed his sleeve as they crossed the dining room. Ellie's gut twisted. Chad materialized instantly, grinning like a shark. "Mr. and Ms. Welcome back. We have the perfect booth for you." Mr. Ellie froze. He had given no name before, always vague, always watching. Now Chad greeted him like a guest of value. As Ellie set menus down, the woman's perfume curled in the air, sharp, expensive. The stranger's eyes flicked to Ellie, soft with recognition. "Plain tea again?" she asked, voice tight. He hesitated, then nodded. "Please." The woman lined in. "Marcus, don't you want champagne?" Ellie's tray nearly slipped. Marcus, so he did have a name. Chad's grin widened. "Our best champagne for you, Mr. Lang." He caught himself, cleared his throat. "For you both." Marcus shot him a sharp look that silenced the rest. Ellie caught it. Authority, command, not the quiet drifter she'd imagined. In the service hall, Megan hissed, "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." "Not a ghost," Ellie whispered, a mask cracking. Back at the booth, the woman Alice, Ellie overheard, laughed softly at something Marcus said. But Ellie noticed his shoulders were tight, his hand never quite resting near hers, like a man playing a role. When Ellie cleared plates, Alice tilted her head. "She's sweet, almost too curious, though, do you think?" Ellie flushed. Marcus's jaw tightened. "She's just doing her job." Alice smirked, sipping champagne. "Everyone's doing a job, Marcus. Some of us just play bigger games." Ellie turned away quickly, but not before she caught Marcus's eyes, pleading, almost apologetic. Later, while bussing a table, Ellie noticed a folded slip beneath Marcus's saucer. Her pulse spiked. She waited until Alice excused herself to the restroom, then brushed past and slid the note into her apron. In neat script, "Trust comes at a cost. Don't get burned." Her hands shook. Was it warning, a confession? She shoved the note deeper into her pocket, just as Chad cornered her. "You think I don't notice you snooping around my guests?" His breath reeked of whiskey. "That man is not your concern. Unless you want fewer shifts." Ellie lifted her chin. "Maybe the wrong person is my concern." Chad's smile thinned. "Careful, you're replaceable." She bit back a retort, returning to the floor. As the night wore on, Alice slipped a manicured hand along Marcus's arm, whispering into his ear. He gave her a hollow smile, but Ellie caught the flicker of discomfort. Something in her chest twisted: anger, jealousy, fear. When the couple finally left, Marcus brushed Ellie's hand as he placed the billfold down. Inside was enough cash to cover a week of groceries. Tucked with it, another napkin note: "Midtown, midnight, bring no one." Ellie's pulse thundered. Back in the locker room, Megan stared at the wad of cash Ellie unfolded. Holy, he's either crazy generous or hiding a body. Ellie showed her the note. "He wants me to come tonight." "Ellie," Megan hissed, "this is how people end up in true crime podcasts." "I have to know," Ellie whispered. "I've been sleepwalking my whole life." "What if this, whatever this is the wake-up?" Megan grabbed her wrist. "Then don't go alone." But Ellie's mind was already racing. Midnight. The Midtown address led her to a nondescript office building, lights dead except one faint glow on the 10th floor. Her breath clouded as she pressed the buzzer. The door clicked open. Inside, the place smelled of paper and dust. Hallways stretched empty. She followed the glow until she reached an office lined with files and maps. Marcus stood at the window, city lights casting his shadow across the floor. He turned slowly, no trace of the awkward drifter now. His voice was calm, deliberate. "You came." Ellie's throat was dry. "What is this? Who are you really?" He studied her, then set a folder on the desk. "You want truth? Start here." Ellie opened it. Inside, spreadsheets, bank transfers, company logo she recognized from Chad's shady dealings. Numbers linked to accounts, siphoned cash trails. She gasped, "This is Chad. He's stealing from everyone." Marcus's eyes hardened, "and he's not working alone." Ellie's knees went weak. "Why me? Why are you dragging me into this?" "Because you see," Marcus said quietly, "most people look away, you don't." Before she could respond, a sharp click echoed behind her. The office door creaked open. Chad Mayer stood there, coat collar high, eyes gleaming with malice. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Ellie's stomach dropped. Marcus didn't flinch. "You followed her." "Of course I did," Chad sneered. "You think I don't watch my staff, and now I know what you are, Langford." Ellie froze. Langford, the name pulsed in her ears. She'd heard it whispered on TV reports and investor gossip. Marcus Langford, billionaire. The air thickened, her world tilted. "Guess secrets don't stay buried long," Chad said, stepping inside. Ellie's heart hammered. Marcus's mask was gone. He was exactly what she feared, someone untouchable. But Chad's smirk told her the danger had only just begun. Ellie's pulse thundered in her ears. Chad Mayers filled the doorway like a storm cloud. His grin stretched thin, eyes lit with cruel satisfaction. The quiet office seemed to shrink around her. "Well, well," Chad said, letting the words roll. "My waitress and my mystery guest, what a pair." Marcus's face was unreadable, but his voice cut like steel. "You shouldn't be here." Chad chuckled. "You kidding me? I should have known. All those napkins, all those little rendezvous, I smelled it." He stepped closer, tapping the door shut behind him. "Marcus Langford, the billionaire who slums it in wool coats. Cute trick." Ellie's throat went dry. The name hung in the air like thunder. Langford. She had seen it on Forbes covers, financial headlines, the kind of world so far above her it might as well have been another planet. Marcus didn't deny it. "Keep my name out of your mouth," he said coldly. Chad sneered. "Why, afraid your pet waitress might realize she's just a pawn. That's all she is, isn't she? A pawn in your little billionaire chess game." Ellie's stomach nodded. "Stop." Chad ignored her. He paced slowly, eyes flicking to the open folder of bank records. "Ah, so you've been digging. My little side hustle laid bare. What's the plan, Marcus? Expose me, take me down. You think the cops care when it's just some waitress crying over missing tips?" Marcus's gaze never wavered. "This goes beyond tips, Mayers, money laundering, tax fraud. If I hand this over—" Chad barked a laugh. "If you hand this over, you bury yourself too. You've been here, snooping. You think your reputation survives a scandal like this?" Ellie wanted to speak, but her voice stuck. Chad's presence was suffocating, his words like oil slicks coating the room. Then Chad's eyes landed on her, and his grin widened. "Unless, maybe you already have your fall girl, sweet little Ellie Harper. Struggling, desperate, always in the wrong place at the wrong time. Perfect scapegoat." Ellie's chest tightened. "Don't you dare." Chad stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Don't test me, Harper. You know I can ruin you with one phone call. Management trusts me. Investors trust me. Who's going to believe the broke waitress over me? Marcus moved subtly, shifting between them. His voice was calm, but there was a razor edge. "You lay one finger on her, and I'll make sure you never see daylight again." The tension thickened until it was hard to breathe. Chad chuckled low. "Big promises, but you're outnumbered, Langford. My friends don't like billionaires meddling in their business. You walk away, forget what you saw, and maybe I'll like this one keep her job." Ellie's mind spun. The folder on the desk, the spreadsheets, the evidence, proof of Chad's crimes. If he destroyed it now, all of this would vanish into the shadows again. Marcus's eyes flicked to her. "Just a second, but enough." A silent question. "Are you ready?" Ellie drew a shaky breath. Her whole life she had avoided stepping into fights bigger than her. Tonight she realized she had already crossed the line. She grabbed the folder. Chad lunged. You stupid. Marcus shoved him back, the two men colliding against the filing cabinet. Papers fluttered into the air. Ellie clutched the folder to her chest and bolted. The hallway stretched before her, dim and endless. Her shoes pounded against the tile as shouts echoed behind. She shoved through a stairwell door and tore down the steps, her breath ragged. Ellie, Marcus's voice thundered, keep running. Her legs burned. Somewhere below, a door slammed, Chad cutting her off. Panic surged. She barreled through the next landing, only to find the exit locked with a heavy chain. Her vision blurred, trapped. The stairwell echoed with footsteps. Chad's laughter drifted up, cornered little rabbit. Ellie's hand shook on the chain door. Please, she whispered, though to who, she wasn't sure. The footsteps closed in. Then bang, the stairwell door above crashed open. Marcus appeared, coat torn, eyes blazing. He tossed a keyring that clattered against the metal railing. Ellie cut. She fumbled, caught it by sheer luck. The chain rattled, the lock stiff, seconds bleeding away. Chad's footsteps thundered closer, a predator saving the chase. Finally, the lock gave. Ellie ripped the chain free, shoved the door open, and spilled into the freezing night air of the alley. Snow fell in thin veils, the city's hum muffled. She sprinted, lungs on fire, clutching the folder like salvation. Behind her, the stairwell door slammed again. Chad's roar cut through the night. You can't run from me, Harper. Ellie darted into the street, nearly colliding with a taxi. Horns blared, lights blinded. She stumbled across the crosswalk, clutching the evidence, while Marcus emerged seconds later, holding Chad at bay long enough for her to disappear into the dark. She didn't stop running until she reached her apartment. She slammed the door, locked it, pressed her back against the wood, chest heaving. Her reflection in the hall mirror looked like a stranger, wild-eyed, hair tangled, lips trembling. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Marcus's voice came through, rough but steady. You okay? She sank to the floor. No, not even close. A pause, good, because you shouldn't be, not when the game just changed. Her hand tightened around the folder. What game, Marcus? Because this feels like war. Silence, then tomorrow, 10 p.m., bring the folder. And Ellie, don't trust anyone, not even me. The line went dead. Ellie sat in the dark, snow tapping the window like restless fingers. The folder lay on the table, its pages whispering danger with every turn. She thought of her mother's frail smile, of Megan's warnings, of Marcus's mask slipping. And she thought of Chad's voice in the stairwell, promising ruin. She was already in too deep. The question was no longer whether she'd survive Sorella's. It was whether she'd survive Marcus Langford. The folder sat on Elle's kitchen table, edges damp from her trembling hands. She hadn't slept. Every creak of the radiator, every shuffle of feet in the hallway outside made her flinch. At dawn, her mother's voice rasped from the bedroom. Ellie, you're scaring yourself thin. Ellie forced a smile. I'm fine, Mom, just long shifts. But she wasn't fine. She was sitting on evidence that could shatter her boss and maybe expose one of the richest men in the country. And Marcus's words still clawed at her. Don't trust anyone, not even me. By the time her next shift at Sorella's began, her nerves were raw. Megan cornered her near the espresso machine. You look like a ghost, Megan whispered. Did you go? Ellie hesitated. Yeah, and it was worse than we thought. Megan's eyes widened. What did you find? Ellie shook her head. You don't want to know, not yet. Before Megan could press, the doors opened with a gust of winter air. And there he was. Marcus Langford, the maskless billionaire, except tonight he wasn't alone. The woman at his side was breathtaking, jet black hair spilling over her shoulders, a crimson dress cut to command every eye in the room. Diamonds glittered at her ears. She moved like she owned the air itself. Ellie's breath caught. Chad materialized instantly, smile slick as oil. Mr. Langford, Miss Monroe, always a pleasure. Ellie's heart stumbled. Miss Monroe. She watched as Marcus guided the woman, Alice, toward the very booth where days ago he'd slid notes meant only for Ellie. His hand brushed Alice's lower back, casual, intimate. Megan muttered, so that's his game. Ellie's chest tightened, heat prickling her eyes. She forced herself forward, menus in hand. Good evening, she said, voice too flat. Welcome back to Sorella's. Alice smiled, cool and assessing. Marcus told me this was his new favorite place. I can see why. Ellie set down glasses with steady hands. Plain tea again. Marcus's eyes flicked to hers, searching. Yes, please. Alice tilted her head, lips curving. Tea, really? We're celebrating champagne, Marcus. Don't be boring. Ellie's jaw locked. She scribbled the order, then turned away before the mask of professionalism cracked. From the corner of her eye, she saw Marcus lean closer to Alice, whispering something that made her laugh, a low, throaty sound that stabbed at Ellie's chest. Back at the service station, Megan muttered, "He's exactly what Chad said he was. Rich guy playing savior, keeping a girlfriend on the side." Ellie wanted to argue, but the sight of Alice's hand on Marcus's sleeve seared into her mind. When she returned to the booth, Alice brushed a manicured finger along the rim of her glass. "Marcus, darling, tell me again why we had to keep this arrangement under wraps. You know I don't like secrets." Marcus's voice was calm but tight. "You know why?" Ellie nearly dropped the tray. Arrangement, secrets, her pulse hammered. Alice smirked at Ellie. "I hope the staff here are discreet. I'd hate for word to get out before the timing is right." Ellie turned on her heel before tears could spill. Hours later, after the couple left, Ellie found another folded napkin under Marcus's saucer. Her hands shook as she opened it. Appearances deceive. Don't stop now. Her vision blurred with anger. Don't stop now. He was feeding her riddles while parading a mistress through the restaurant like a trophy. In the locker room, Megan leaned against the wall. What did he leave this time? Ellie shoved the napkin into her bag. "Doesn't matter. I'm done." Ellie. No, her voice cracked. "He's not who I thought he was. I won't be played like this." But walking home through the snow, Ellie couldn't shake the memory of Marcus's eyes, haunted, pleading, almost as though he wanted her to see through the act. And then she remembered Chad, the way he'd said, "You're just a pawn." Maybe she was, maybe they all were. The next evening, Ellie sat with her mother at their worn kitchen table. Bill's spread lighted her face. "You've met someone." Ellie choked on her tea. "What? No, Mom." Her mother smiled faintly. "Your eyes give you away. Someone who scares you, someone who makes you restless." Ellie swallowed hard. "It's not like that. He's not who I thought." "People rarely are," her mother said softly. "The question is, does he make you better or does he make you small?" Ellie had no answer. 2 nights later, Searles buzzed with a charity dinner, cameras flashing at the entrance. Ellie balanced trays, head down, until a hush rippled through the room. Marcus Langford entered with Alice on his arm. Paparazzi lights strobed through the glass, capturing every angle. Alice leaned into him, smile glittering. "See, we make quite the story." Ellie's stomach turned. This wasn't a fling hidden in shadows. This was spectacle. As she passed, Marcus's hand brushed the edge of a napkin. A quick slide, unnoticed by Alice. Against her better judgment, Ellie slipped it into her pocket. Later, in the alley behind the restaurant, she unfolded it under the buzz of a flickering street lamp. Trust the cracks. They reveal more than the surface ever will. She almost screamed in frustration. Cracks, what does that even mean? A voice answered from the shadows. "It means he's playing a bigger game than you realize." Ellie spun. A man in a dark coat stepped forward, face half hidden. Not Marcus, not Chad, someone else. Who are you?" Ellie stammered. The man's smile was thin. "Someone who's been watching Langford longer than you have, and if you're smart, you'll stop before you get burned alive." Her skin prickled with dread. The man stepped closer, slipping a card into her hand. "No name, just a number. Call if you want the truth, but hurry. Because once Alice Monroe makes her move, even Langford won't be able to protect you." Ellie's breath caught. What move? But the man was already gone, swallowed by the snow. Ellie stared at the card, Marcus's last note trembling in her other hand. "Dross the Greggs," and somewhere between the 2 warnings she realized she wasn't walking toward the truth. She was running straight into the fire. By the time Elle dragged herself into Sorella's the next evening, her nerves were shot. The card from the stranger still burned in her coat pocket. She hadn't called, not yet, maybe out of fear, maybe because she didn't know what she wanted the truth to be. Megan eyed her the moment she walked in. "You're jumpy." "Did you see something again?" Ellie shook her head. "Nothing I can explain." Before Megan could press, the room erupted. A cluster of reporters swarmed the entrance, cameras flashing like fireworks. Chad stormed from the office, barking at the host stand. What the hell are they doing here? The answer arrived in a wave of gasps as Marcus Langford walked through the door. But this time he didn't hide behind a plain coat. He was suited in charcoal, cufflinks gleaming, the quiet drifter replaced by a man who owned the air he breathed. Alice Munro glided at his side, her crimson lips curved in triumph. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Langford, why the secrecy? Why sorrels?" Marcus's jaw flexed, but he didn't respond. Cameras crackled, guests whispered, "That's him, that's Langford." Ellie froze behind the service station. Her chest tightened as if the entire room was closing in. It was real. He wasn't just some strange, generous customer. He was Marcus Langford, billionaire investor, head of Langford Capital, the kind of man whose face was splashed across Forbes covers, whose decisions rippled through economies. And she had been reading his napkin notes like bedtime riddles. Megan whispered, "Ellie, you okay?" Ellie forced her lips into a line, not even close. Chad adjusted his tie and plastered on a smile. "Mr. Langford, Ms. Munro, welcome. Allow me to escort you to our best table." Alice smirked, her gaze sweeping the room like a queen surveying her court. "At last, Marcus, now everyone knows." Ellie carried a tray past them, head low, praying he wouldn't look at her. But of course he did. His eyes caught hers, steady, unreadable, like he was trying to send a message without words. She almost stumbled. Alice noticed, her smile sharpened. The night spiraled into chaos, the restaurant filled with whispers, every table craning to get a look at the billionaire in their midst. Servers fumbled under pressure. Chad strutted, soaking in the reflected glory, acting as though Marcus had come solely because of him. Ella kept her head down, but every nerve screamed awareness of that booth. Marcus, immaculate, Alice, radiant, two people who looked like they belonged in glossy magazines, not within the same orbit as a waitress drowning in debt. And yet Marcus's gaze kept drifting. Each time Elle passed, his eyes flicked toward her, quick, controlled, but impossible to ignore. Finally, when she set down champagne, his voice brushed the air, quiet for her alone. "Don't believe what you see." Her hand trembled on the tray. She forced a smile for the table, then turned away fast. Alice's eyes followed her retreat. Later in the back corridor, Chad cornered Ellie. "So, that's the big secret. You knew, didn't you?" Ellie stiffened. "I didn't know anything." "Oh, cut the act." Chad leaned closer, breath sour with whiskey. "You've been running around with napkins in your pocket like some fairy tale waitress who thinks the prince is hers." Ellie's face flushed. "You don't know what you're talking about." He smirked. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you think Langford's going to choose you over Alice Munro, you're dumber than I thought." Ellie shoved past him, heart racing. The dinner dragged on, and the weight of secrets pressing heavier with every course. Finally, the booth emptied, reporters trailing Marcus and Alice as they exited. Ellie exhaled, shoulders sagging. She slipped into the alley for air. Snow swirled under the street lamps, soft but relentless. "Ellie." Thief spum. Marcus stood there, coat buttoned now, but his eyes raw, stripped of the billionaire polish. "You should have told me," Ellie said, voice breaking. "You let me think you were just someone trying to understand. All those notes, all those riddles, was any of it real?" "It was all real," Marcus said firmly. "But I had to hide. People like Chad, like Alice, they're watching every move I make. If they knew I was here, looking, asking questions, they'd bury it." Ellie's throat tightened. "And what am I, Marcus? A decoy, a cover story?" His eyes softened. "You're the only one who didn't see me as a headline. You looked at me and saw a man, not a billionaire." Her chest ached with conflicting emotions. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust, but Alice's laughter still rang in her ears, her hand on his arm, her words about arrangements. "I don't know what to believe," Ellie whispered. Marcus hesitated, then stepped closer. "Then believe this. Alice isn't who she says she is." The alley door banged open. Chad strode out, his grin sharp as knives. "Well, isn't this sweet? Secret meetings in alleys now. Langford, you really are slumming it." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Not tonight, Mayers." But Chad only smiled wider. "Tonight's perfect, because now I've got leverage. The billionaire, the mistress, and the waitress. Guess which one gets sacrificed first?" Ellie's stomach dropped. Chad leaned in, voice a low hiss. You think cameras love a scandal. Wait until they hear Langford's been whispering to one of his servers. Your face splashed across tabloids. Harper ruins him, destroys you, and I'll be the one feeding the story. Ellie's breath caught. Marcus stepped forward, voice ice. If you so much as leak a word. Chad chuckled. What'll you do? Sue me with your billions, please. By the time you file, Alice and I will have spun the narrative clean. Ellie's eyes snapped to Alice's name. Alice, you're working with her. Chad's smirk deepened. You really think she's his girlfriend? She's his handler, PR, fixer, whatever you want to call it. And right now, she's deciding whether Langford's little waitress problem needs to disappear. The ground seemed to tilt under Ellie's feet. Marcus's face darkened, fury threading through his control. You're lying. But Chad's grin was pure confidence. Am I? Snow swirled between them, silence thick as stone. Ellie's heart pounded. Chad's words might be manipulation, but the image of Alice's triumphant smile tonight, the way she played to cameras, echoed too clearly. Was Marcus the one being betrayed, or was she? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from She looked up, and for the first time, Marcus Langford looked afraid. The week after Marcus's identity exploded, Sorella's turned into a circus. Reporters loitered outside, influencers demanded reservations just to sit in the same room where the billionaire hid in plain sight, and Chad strutted like a peacock, feeding off the chaos. Ellie kept her head down, but the tension gnawed at her bones. The folder of evidence lay hidden under her mattress, its pages like a live wire waiting to ignite. Then Chad announced the news. Big event next Friday, he told the staff, voice dripping with fake benevolence. A charity gala, Langford's invited, major donors, press coverage, the works. This could put Sorella's on the map forever. Megan whispered at Ellie's side, doesn't this feel wrong? Ellie's stomach twisted. It felt staged, too perfect. And when she caught Chad's eyes across the room, sharp, calculating, lingering on her just a little too long, her dread deepened. The night of the gala, Sorella's was unrecognizable. Crystal chandeliers blazed, champagne towers sparkled, and photographers prowled like vultures. Guests in gowns and tuxedos buzzed with shallow laughter. Ellie floated through it like a ghost, tray in hand, smile brittle. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, does he make you better, or does he make you small? And then Marcus arrived. He wasn't hiding anymore, no wool coat. Tonight he looked every inch the billionaire, tailored tuxedo, polished shoes, posture commanding. But his eyes found Ellie's across the crowded room, and in them she saw something raw, fear and apology. Alice was glued to his arm, dazzling in silver sequins, her laugh a blade disguised as music. Cameras flashed as she whispered into his ear. Ellie's chest tightened. Midway through the event, Chad made his move. He mounted the stage, microphone in hand, grinning wide. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed, tonight we celebrate generosity, truth, and transparency. And who better to embody those values than our honored guest, Marcus Langford? Applause thundered. Marcus's jaw clenched. He hadn't agreed to this. Ellie could see it in the rigid line of his shoulders. Chad's grin sharpened, but transparency only works if we tell the whole story. And I think it's time New York heard the whole story of Marcus Langford's little visits here. Ellie's blood froze. Gasps rippled through the crowd as screens lit up along the walls, photos of Marcus at Sorella's, sitting alone, scribbling notes. And in several frames, Ellie hovered nearby, her face caught in the camera's unflattering lens. The whispers spread like wildfire. Who is she, the waitress, his mistress? Ellie's stomach dropped. Marcus moved, but before he could reach the stage, Chad cut the lights. The room plunged into dimness, gasps swelling. In the chaos, Ellie felt a hand clamp around her wrist. She spun, Megan, eyes wide. Chad is setting you up, come on. They slipped into the service corridor, but the noise of the gale faded fast. The hall was dark, colder than usual. Where are we going? Ellie hissed. I thought this way led to the back exit, Megan said, but her voice shook. A shadow loomed. Chad stepped from the darkness, keys dangling from his hand. His grin gleamed in the dim light. Going somewhere, Harper. Allie's chest seized. Before she could answer, Chad shoved her. She stumbled backward, colliding with a heavy metal door. It swung open into the walk-in freezer. The cold slammed into her lungs as she fell inside. The door shut. Ellie spun, pounding her fists against the metal. No, let me out. Through the small window, Chad's grin stared back. You wanted to play detective. Now you can chill until the show's over. Her fists bruised against the door. Chad, please. But he walked away, whistling. The freezer air cut like knives. Ellie's breath turned to fog instantly. She hugged herself, panic clawing up her throat. The evidence folder wasn't with her, thank God, but her body wouldn't last long in here. Her mother's face flashed in her mind. Megan's warnings, Marcus's haunted eyes. Not like this, she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. Please, not like this. Her knees buckled, the cold seeping into her bones. Then pounding on the door. Lily. Marcus's voice. She staggered up, slamming her palms against the metal. Marcus, I'm here. The lock rattled, metal clanged. Hold on. Her body shook violently. She sank to the floor, numbness creeping in. Stay awake, Marcus shouted. Ellie, stay with me. A wrenching sound tore through the air. The door yanked open. Marcus burst in, coat stripped, wrapping it around her trembling body. I've got you, he murmured fiercely, lifting her against his chest. Her head dropped to his shoulder, voice thin as a thread. Why are you doing this? Because you see me, he whispered, even when I'm not who I'm supposed to be. Darkness closed around her, but his words clung. When she woke, warmth pressed against her, blankets, a faint hum of heaters. She blinked. She was in Marcus's penthouse, city lights blazing beyond the glass. Megan hovered nearby, eyes red. You're alive, thank God. Marcus stepped into view, no tuxedo now, just a shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows. His face was lined with exhaustion. Ellie's voice cracked. Chad tried to kill me. Marcus's jaw hardened, and he won't get another chance. Oh, Ellie's chest rose, heart pounding. You can't stop him. He has everything, power, connections, Alice. At Alice's name, Marcus's eyes flickered. Alice isn't what you think. Ellie stared, then what is she? Before he could answer, Marcus's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, face darkening. She's the one who just leaked the story to the press. Ellie's blood ran cold. The TV on the wall flickered on headlines scrolling, photos of Ellie plastered across the screen. Billionaire's secret waitress scandal. Her face, her name, everywhere. Ellie's breath shattered. Marcus turned to her, voice steady but urgent. It has started, and if we don't move fast, Chad and Alice will burn us both. Ellie's world tilted, the city spinning beyond the glass. She wasn't invisible anymore, she was the story. Ellie never thought her face would end up on national TV. But there it was, splashed across every news station. Blurry photos of her serving tea, passing Marcus napkins, eyes lingering on him like she'd been caught in the act of some forbidden affair. The captions burned, Langford's secret mistress, waitress tied to Billionaire's hidden life. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing, unknown numbers, reporters, social media pings lighting up like firecrackers. She buried it under a pillow, heart hammering. Megan's voice cut through the storm. You can't hide, you know that, right? Ellie pressed her fists to her temples. I didn't ask for this. Megan softened. Nobody asks for it, but maybe you can decide how it ends. Ellie shook her head. Chad will spin it. Alice will spin it. I'm just nothing compared to them. You're not nothing, Megan said firmly. You're the only one telling the truth. 2 nights later, Marcus called. His voice was taut. There's another gala tonight. Bigger, sponsors, cameras, Chad's hosting. He's going to bury you, Ellie, unless we stop him. Ellie's throat tightened. Stop him how? By telling the truth before he does. She almost laughed. You want me to stand in front of a room full of billionaires and admit I've been trading notes? Said simply, because if you don't, he'll paint you as a liar, a climber, a fraud, and the world will believe him. Silence stretched. Finally, Ellie whispered, then I guess I have no choice. The gala was brighter than the last, chandeliers burning like suns. Cameramen jostled for angles as guests paraded in gowns worth more than Ellie's yearly rent. She hovered at the edge of the room, palms slick, heart rattling against her ribs. Marcus stood near the stage, tuxedo sharp, gaze locked on her as though silently anchoring her to the ground. Chad prowled like a king, champagne flute in hand, smiling at cameras. Alice sparkled beside him, every inch the glittering co-conspirator. At 9 sharp, Chad seized the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering to celebrate honesty and integrity. Tonight, we close the chapter on lies and shine a light on the truth. He paused, savoring the hush. The truth is, Marcus Langford has been deceiving you all, sneaking into Sorella's under false pretenses, consorting with staff, jeopardizing reputations. Gasps rippled. Chad's grin widened, but don't take my word for it. Let me introduce his secret companion, the waitress herself, Ellie Harper. A spotlight stabbed the room. Ellie froze, dozens of eyes seared into her. Her knees wobbled. But then Marcus's voice rang out, strong and steady. Ellie. Her gaze snapped to him. His eyes told her what his voice didn't speak. Tell them. Ellie's legs carried her forward, every step heavy. She climbed the stage, blinded by lights, heart slamming like a drum. Chad handed her the microphone, smirking. Go on, Harper. Tell them how he seduced you. Ellie's throat closed. She stared at the crowd, powerful faces, skeptical eyes. She thought of her mother in their tiny apartment, Megan watching from the sidelines, Marcus fighting to protect something more than money. Her voice broke, but she forced it steady. I didn't seduce anyone, she said. I served tea. I folded napkins. I worked double so my mom could breathe with oxygen we can barely afford. The crowd murmured, cameras zoomed. And in the middle of all that, Ellie continued, voice rising, a man came in. A man who didn't treat me like wallpaper, who asked me what hope looked like. Her eyes burned, but she pressed on. That man wasn't just Marcus Langford, billionaire. He was a person who saw something nobody else in this room ever cared to see, that people like me exist, that our lives matter. Her voice cracked, tears spilling. I can't stay silent anymore, not when men like Chad Mayers steal from us. Not when he robs every server, every busboy, every dishwasher who works themselves raw so people like you can sip champagne. Gasps rippled again. Chad's smile faltered. Ellie held up the folder, trembling in her hands. This is proof, spreadsheets, records, every dollar he skimmed from us, every lie he told. She dropped it on the podium, pages spilling across the stage. The room erupted, shouts, flashes, voices colliding. Chad lunged, you lying little. But Marcus stepped forward, cutting him off. His voice rang like thunder. She's not lying. Everything she said is true. Silence fell. Marcus straightened, no mask left. Yes, I'm Marcus Langford. I came here to see what my money couldn't buy, to understand what power hides. And in doing so, I found a truth uglier than I imagined. Chad Mayers exploited his staff. He lined his pockets while his employees starved, and I won't let it stand. The crowd roared, cameras blazing. Alice's smile flickered, then died. She whispered something sharp into Chan's ear, but his face had already gone pale. Ellie stared at Marcus, breath cut. He had said it, out loud, no more disguises. The billionaire was just a man now. Backstage chaos swelled, reporters clawing for quotes, staff whispering in shock. Megan found Ellie clutching her hands. You did it. You actually did it. Ellie's chest shook. I don't know what I did. Truth, Megan said fiercely. That's what you did. But before relief could settle, Marcus appeared, his face grim. This isn't over. Chad won't go down without swinging. And Alice, he cut himself off, jaw tightening. Alice just moved 2 steps ahead. As if on cue, Ellie's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Nice speech. Too bad it ends tonight. Her blood ran cold. Marcus saw her face and snatched the phone. His own paled. Ellie, he whispered, voice low, urgent. You're not safe anymore. What? The crowd outside roared louder, reporters chanting questions, the night spinning out of control. And Ellie Harper realized speaking truth had set her free. But it had also painted a target on her back. The news hit before dawn. Restaurant manager arrested in embezzlement scandal, the anchors declared. Chad Mayers' mugshot glared from every screen, his one slick hair plastered down, his smirk gone. Ellie watched from her apartment couch, blanket wrapped tight, hands trembling around a mug of coffee gun cold. She should have felt relief. Chad was finished, but her phone wouldn't stop buzzing, each vibration another dagger. Comment threads called her gold digger, homewrecker, liar. Photos of her at the podium looped on repeat, her tear-streaked face dissected by strangers who knew nothing about her. Her mother padded into the living room, frail and weary. Ellie. Ellie forced a smile. It's over, Mom, he's gone. Her mother lowered onto the couch, taking her hand. But you don't look free. Ellie's throat tightened because I'm not. Later that day, Marcus appeared at her door. No cameras, no tuxedo, just Marcus in a simple sweater, exhaustion shadowing his face. You shouldn't be here, Ellie said, voice hoarse. I had to be, he replied. She let him in, silence thick between them. He looked around the modest apartment, his eyes catching on the oxygen tank by the bed. This is what you fight for, he murmured. Ellie crossed her arms. Chad's gone, but the story is, I'm branded now. Every time I walk down the street, people whisper. They don't care that I told the truth. They just care that I was the waitress in the billionaire's shadow. Marcus's gaze was steady. Then let me help you. Her heart clenched. I don't want your charity. It's not charity, he said quietly. It's responsibility. You stood up when I couldn't. You risked everything. Ellie shook her head. What did it cost me? My job, my privacy, my peace. Silence fell. Finally, Marcus whispered, I'm sorry. The apology lingered long after he left, but it wasn't the only thing that haunted her. Because that night her phone buzzed with a new message. Coffee, Alice Monroe. Ellie's stomach lurched. She should have ignored it, but something in the note, sharp, almost mocking, drew her out. They met in a glossy cafe uptown. Alice arrived flawless as ever, coat trimmed with fur, sunglasses hiding eyes that didn't need hiding. You're brave, Alice said smoothly, sliding into the booth. Or stupid, hard to tell which. Ellie clenched her jaw. Why am I here? Alice leaned forward, smile razor thin. Because you should know what kind of man you're risking your soul for. Ellie's pulse quickened. Marcus. Alice smirked. Marcus Langford played savior well, but saviors are still men, men with appetites, men who lie. You think you're different because you caught his eye. You're not, you're temporary. Allie's stomach twisted. Alice sipped her latte unbothered. I was his fixer, his handler. I made sure his image never cracked, and for a while I was more. Until I realized he doesn't love people. He uses them like he's using you. Ellie's voice shook. If you really believe that, why warn me? Alice's smile sharpened. Because if you break before he does, the whole machine collapses, and I'd rather burn him myself. Ellie stared, words stuck in her throat. Alice rose gracefully, tossing a bill on the table. Enjoy being the headline, Harper. It won't last long. And just like that, she was gone. Ellie walked home through icy wind. Alice's words echoed louder than the traffic. Temporary pawn headline. By the time she reached her apartment, her chest ached with doubt. She opened her phone, scrolling through hate-filled comments until her vision blurred. Finally, she whispered to the empty room, maybe she's right. Days blurred. Chad's trial splashed across tabloids. His crimes were undeniable: embezzlement, fraud, attempted assault. But alongside every article about him ran photos of Ellie labeled Langford's waitress, as if her entire existence was defined by Marcus. The restaurant cut ties with her. No shifts, no paycheck. Rent loomed, bills stacked. One night she found herself at the kitchen table, head buried in her arms, tears wetting unpaid invoices. Her mother's soft hand rested on her shoulder. Ellie, she whispered, you've carried too much alone. Let someone carry you. Ellie shook her head. I don't know who to trust anymore. The knock at the door startled her. Marcus stood there again, this time with no pretense, no armor, just tired eyes and a vulnerability that made her heart ache. I heard about the cafe, he said quietly. Ellie stiffened. She told me you de-use me, that I'm nothing but a pawn. Marcus stepped close. Not a pawn, Ellie. You're the only real thing in my life. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to, but Alice's voice still hissed in her ears. I don't know if I can trust you, she whispered. Marcus's jaw tightened. Then let me prove it. But before she could answer, a car screeched outside. Headlights cut through the window. A figure stepped from the shadows, snapping photos. Paparazzi. Ellie's stomach plummeted. Marcus moved to shield her, but it was too late. Flashbulbs lit the apartment, her private sanctuary stolen. Ellie collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming. It'll never end, will it? Marcus crouched in front of her, his voice raw. Not until we end it together. Ellie stared into his eyes, searching for reception, for cracks, but all she saw was exhaustion and something frighteningly close to love. And yet Alice's words lingered like poison. Temporary pawn headline. That night, as Marcus left, Ellie stood at the window, watching the flashes fade. She whispered to herself, "The truth saved me, but it also destroyed me." Her reflection stared back, tired, fragile, but unbroken. And in the quiet, one question pulsed louder than her heartbeat. Would she survive Marcus Langford's world, or would it swallow her whole? The winter that had swallowed Ellie's life finally began to break. Chad Mayers was sentenced in early March, 10 years for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted assault. He stood in court pale and deflated, no slick suit, no smug grin, just a man stripped of power. Ellie watched the verdict on TV from her couch, Megan at her side. Her mother dozed in the next room, breathing steady for once. Relief should have washed over Ellie, but instead she felt something colder, heavier. Chad was gone, yes, but the scars he left behind were deeper than prison walls could fix. Megan squeezed her hand. "He can't hurt you anymore." Ellie managed a faint smile. Maybe, but he already did. Alice Munro's fall came more quietly. One morning, Ellie woke to headlines. Langford's former PR executive blacklisted after leak. Emails had surfaced proving Alice had engineered scandals for profit, selling information to rival firms. By noon, her contracts evaporated. By night, she was untouchable. Ellie closed her laptop, staring at the dark screen. For a moment she felt pity, then remembered Alice's words, "Your temporary pawn headline." And the pity turned to nothing. Weeks passed, the frenzy cooled, reporters moved on to fresher scandals. Ellie slipped back into shadows where she had always lived. But she was different now. Instead of returning to Sorella's, she poured her remaining savings into a dream. With Megan's help, they rented a small brick corner shop on the Lower East Side. They scrubbed floors, painted walls, strung lights above thrift store tables. The sign above the door read, "Harper and Carter Cafe." Opening day was small, a few curious neighbors, the smell of fresh coffee, the hum of laughter. Ellie wore an apron that wasn't a uniform but her own choice. For the first time in years, she felt free. Her mother sat near the window, oxygen tank beside her, smiling brighter than Ellie had seen in months. "You did it," she whispered. Ellie knelt, tears stinging. "We did it, Mom, we finally did." The bell above the cafe door jangled late that afternoon. Ellie looked up. Marcus Langford stood there, no entourage, no suit, just Marcus in a simple jacket, holding a single daisy like a peace offering. Customers whispered, recognizing him, but he ignored them. His eyes were only on Ellie. "Nice place," he said softly. Ellie crossed her arms, heart hammering. "You shouldn't be here. This is my world, not yours." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know, and I'm not here to take it. I just wanted to see the life you built, the life you deserve." Ellie's chest tightened. "You don't get to just walk in and—" "I know," he cut in. His voice was raw, stripped bare. "I know I hurt you. By hiding, by lying, by letting you carry weight that wasn't yours. And maybe I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm more than a mask." He held out the daisy, but I had to try. Ellie stared at it, simple, fragile, the opposite of diamonds and scandals. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Does he make you better, or does he make you small?" Ellie reached out slowly, fingers brushing the stem. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered. Marcus's eyes glistened. "Then let me earn it, here where you're strongest, where you don't need me to save you." For a long moment, silence stretched. Customers pretended not to listen, but the air was thick with suspense. Finally, Ellie placed the daisy in a glass by the register. "1 cup of plain tea, that's all you get." Marcus's smile broke, soft and real. Plain tea, always. That night after the cafe closed, Ellie sat with Megan under the string lights, exhaustion giving way to peace. "You let him in," Megan teased. Ellie shook her head, smiling faintly. "I let him sit, that's all." But in her chest a quiet warmth bloomed. Not a fairy tale, not a promise, just a beginning. Spring crept in, the cafe filled with faces new and old, workers, neighbors, strangers seeking warmth. Ellie poured coffee, shared smiles, and every so often caught Marcus sitting quietly at the window, sipping his tea, watching the life she built. He didn't demand, he didn't overshadow, he simply showed up. And slowly she realized that was enough. Months later, Ellie stood on the sidewalk outside the cafe, sunlight on her skin. The city roared around her, relentless and alive. She thought of everything, the storms, the scandals, the betrayals, Chad in prison, Alice erased, Marcus unmasked. And her, not invisible anymore, not wallpaper, but Ellie Harper, a woman who had survived lies, power, and fire and still found light. She closed her eyes, breathing deep, and for the first time in her life, she didn't just survive.